Hello and welcome to the first session of Karen's Colours for 2026. This is going to be one of those monthly colour forecasts, but before embarking on a reading for January 2026, I'd like to remind us all that this is a traditional time to review the past year before setting out our goals and resolutions for the upcoming year. If you've already done those resolutions, then maybe you might like to consider them in the light of what I present today. We're going to be examining the progress made, the setbacks encountered, the challenges that we've overcome, and the work that has been left undone. But before we begin, thank you once again for attending this session. I know that there are not many of you that do so, but I'm certainly hoping that those of you who do will get something positive out of these readings. The reading itself is going to be rather truncated because I'll spend most of the time looking at 2025 in review. We're going to be examining the colours of the main skills and experiences that you've had, the colours of the primary blockages or deficits that have afflicted you throughout the year. And the review will encourage you to think where you're going to go next. There'll be creation of New Year's resolutions that are involved, but those, of course, are very personal to you. And of course, because we make New Year's resolutions, there are lots of goals to be set, lots of ideas about where we want to go next. There is an importance in reviewing past experience so that we can create a future path. And that future path will be denoted by one colour card for January 26. And I'm going to also give you an oracle card to help guide the way. But otherwise, the reading will be extremely truncated. Certainly, enjoy. Turning now to people born in the month of July. How did 2025 fare for you? Well, you began the year with a number of different colours. We started these readings in February, and here we had a mixture of all sorts of different issues that you needed to deal with. They were multi-directional, they were multifaceted, issues that led you in all sorts of different directions. But by March, these had consolidated into three specific colours: black, green, and white. Now, black and white are opposites. They are directions of extremes. So you were torn in your values between one choice and another. And choosing between extremes can be rather difficult, particularly when your heart, your values are not clearly defined. Because by April, it showed that there was a great deal of agitation. Pink and red were the dominant colours for that month. You were vulnerable, but at the same time, there was so much that you needed to get done. You wanted something for yourself, but the world was saying, stop, stop, and allow assistance to come your way. And that was something that was a little bit out of your comfort zone. By May, you'd reverted back to the sorts of ways in which you normally would function. That is blue, nurturing, caring, understanding, being able to be organised to carry out whatever needed to be done. And that was signified by the preponderance of blue that month. At the same time, you also had a lot of white. Now, white means dealing with the unexpected, with the novel, with the new. So perhaps there was some sort of situation in which you found yourself having to reevaluate, to see things from a different perspective. By June, stability and calm had returned to your life. Things had settled down, you knew your place, you knew what everything else was in your life, and you were feeling quite comfortable. But by July, it was all up in the air again. When we have a lot of purple in our lives, it means that there is a fair amount of destruction and recreation, but also it's having fun. You were playing, but at the same time, it meant that you had to readjust and recreate your life. That disruption continued into August. This time, however, it was accompanied by a preponderance of yellow. Yellow has to do with learning, with memory. It has to do with experiencing new things. Now, if you had a lot of play, a lot of fun during the purple times, then the yellow was creating joy for you. On the other hand, if it was disruption, then you could be finding yourself having had a very stressful August. But by September, you were back to heading in all sorts of different directions. All sorts of issues were popping up, and you had to deal with them as they arose. It was a rather uncomfortable month insofar as you were not really prepared in any specific direction. By October, it was all white and orange. White being a clash with reality. Suddenly there was something new in your life, and that created a fair degree of curiosity. The orange, on the other hand, meant that not only were you needing to be dealing with new social life issues, but also you needed courage and confidence to be able to withstand whatever shock that the white had brought to you. By November, that shock remained, but now you were torn between green and red, between stop and go. What decisions were you going to make? Were you going to follow your heart, as in the green, or were you going to follow your passions, as in the red? Either way, the experience was a freedom to act on any sort of awakening emotions that were available to you. And then we get to December. And in December, the predominant colors were yellow, red, and blue. Learning to control your responsibilities. Learning to be able to manage your passions and at the same time be able to do your duty by the things that you were expected to do. So you had to control your life in a way that enabled you to be both busy and happy, but also to enable you to overcome any stress that was created as a result of your leading your life through passion. And that brings us to the summary of the entire year. Three colours tended to predominate. White was the most common one, followed by yellow and purple in equal measure. White was all about curiosity and experience and shock. You were faced with a whole range of new experiences that were unfamiliar to you. And these were accompanied by yellow, which was excitement, learning, and remembering things, and purple, which is all about power, disruption, and creativity. Remembering, of course, that yellow and purple are opposites on the color wheel. So there was a swinging backwards and forwards between stress and having fun, and also with joy and having to deal with disruption and disasters that may have befallen you, regardless of what they were. But altogether, the curiosity, the experience, the shock with reality is what drove you forward throughout the year. So what things were you in fact having problems with or avoiding? You began the year with four colours that were missing: black, white, blue, and brown, which gave us a baseline. By March, all you had left was the blue and brown. Now, these have both got to do with hard work. The blue has to do with duty and responsibility and nurturing and doing the whatever it takes to keep the peace. Brown, on the other hand, was the development of your own goals, your own ambitions, the things that you wanted to do that you needed to learn new skills for. And that continued through into April. And by May, it was still there, but now there was also some sort of confidence that you needed to portray to the world. You needed to show that you were able to deal with whatever issues arose with a fair degree of courage. By June, it was back to the same duty and responsibility and trying to get your own goals working. July and August Both gave you an increase in that aims and goals and ambitions and practical skills that you needed to deal with. But by September, you were back to showing that same need to follow duty. This time, however, it was accompanied by an increase in purple and pink. That is, there were things that suddenly disrupted the status quo, and you were fairly vulnerable to them. You didn't really know how to deal with them. Maybe you'd run out of energy. Maybe the fun you were having was enabling you to realize that there was something missing in your life and you needed assistance. By October, it was back to the blue and brown again, back to duty and ambition. November and December gave you both just brown. Once again, there was this drive towards having to do something, but exactly what was it? Now, remembering that all of these are the issues that you were dealing with or trying to avoid. Of course, the one color that stood out above all was brown. This was goals and practical skills. Are you, in fact, able to manage what it is that you set out to do? Are you setting workable goals, achievable ambitions? Are the practical skills that you are developing really the ones that you need in order to drive yourself forward? Ambition and determination are issues that had faltered for you. And as far as being grounded or stable in your life, that too was an issue that you were constantly grappling with throughout the year. So altogether, an exposure to education and learning and creativity were undermined by an inability to set your goals in any meaningful way or to develop the necessary skills that will enable you to move forward. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, and that was a struggle for you throughout 2025. Let's now see what happens in 2026. The Oracle deck that I've chosen for this purpose is The Soul's Journey by James Van Praagh. This deck consists of a number of affirmations, little meditations that you can do to help you along the way. But first, let's choose a color card to help determine just what it is that you need to concentrate on at the beginning of 2026. And the card we have here is grey on grey. There's a lot of concern, a lot of confusion, a lot of having to rethink, to reevaluate, to find a middle road, to overcome the fact that you are constantly second guessing yourself without necessarily coming to the sort of conclusions or the sorts of issues that will enable you to move forward feeling stable and grounded. What does our meditation oracle give us? And it's interesting because here we have death. I'm learning that endings are merely beginnings. So whatever it is that's moving out of your life, whatever it is that you're leaving behind in the past, is going to lead you forward. But before you realize what that forward path is, lies a great deal of uncertainty and confusion, which of course is what the grey is all about. It's a very interesting combination. In order to find the stability and the middle road that you're looking for to help you through 2026, you need first to leave the past behind. Well, I hope you received something positive out of that annual review and have taken on board the small color reading and affirmation as a guide towards 2026. Certainly, looking at these readings from an annual perspective, a retrospective, I've come across a number of insights, both for myself, but also on behalf of those people that I know that have birthdays in the various months that I have been reading for. And one of the things that's come up here is whether or not I would even bother to continue with these. I feel hopeful that I should. I also feel as though I need to make some alterations. If you can think of suggestions that might make these more user-friendly, if you've been following the readings at all, you might even find that there's something in them that you might like to comment about. And I'd really appreciate those comments, because right now I'm in a dilemma, which is why I haven't actually done a full reading for every month, for every birthday month for January. It all depends on the results of this reading as to whether or not I continue. I have a lot to contemplate. My black is quite prominent too. Anyway, if you're new here and you haven't actually seen these before, you might think they're a bit confusing. That's part and parcel of a colour reading. It's something that most people will never have experienced. So I wish you all the best for 2026, and hopefully we'll meet again for more colour readings. If not, plenty of other things I can talk about that have to do with colour. Until next time, bye.